Hi, everybody. Welcome to the panel on Inside the Electric Bike Revolution. My name is Micah. I'm something of an e-bike nerd, but I am very excited to be joined by perhaps even bigger e-bike nerds, and I say that as a term of endearment. We have a great panel today. I'm not going to butcher their introductions myself. Instead, I'm going to invite each of them to introduce, please, yourself, where you're from, the company that you represent, and perhaps just a brief intro of the type of bikes that you make or the type of riders that you guys are focused on. So we'll start with Tanguy.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Tanguy Oreti, founder and CTO of Cowboy. We've created a company in Brussels 6 years ago. We've launched the fourth generation of our bike, the Cowboy 4, so it's a connected bike. There is a wireless charger built into the cockpit of the bike, so you can actually plug the phone onto the bike, and the phone is the screen of the bike for us. And just to give you a number, we do roughly 1.5 million trips per month with the riders. And I would say that the key difference between us and maybe the other bikes is that the bike is super simple to use. You don't have any buttons, you don't have any gears, any level of assistance. Everything is automatic and connected to the phone, so you don't have to do anything.
Perfect. Adam?
Hi, I'm Adam Hammerman. I'm a design professional, been working in the industry for a little over 10 years. Started at Specialized, consulted with a bunch of other brands, P&W Components, TRP, Dance, and now I'm in charge of urban active mobility at Cannondale, where we focus on being a broad spectrum brand. We offer ride solutions for a really broad range of riders.
Niels?
Great. I'm Niels Bark, and well, first of all, thanks for having us here. Especially interesting because I think we've been flying under the radar for most of you guys because I'm leading Lekker bikes. It's a Dutch bicycle brand that we started actually in Australia. So the past 10 years, we've been trying to bring Dutch cycling to the Aussies. And fast forward to today, we're market leader with our Dutch bikes, e-bikes at the moment. And we have brand stores in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. So if you're ever gonna travel to Australia, that's probably where you see us. In the meantime, we brought Lekker home. So we're now active in Amsterdam and Berlin with hubs, focusing besides Australia on the Netherlands and Germany and a little bit of Scandinavia. With e-bikes, we really believe in the core function of an e-bike. So we're focusing more on, what do we believe is essential of an e-bike, bringing you from A to B. So focusing on simplicity, serviceability, and also making sure that vast network of dealers and service stations can work on our bikes. So that's what we do. And the one thing, if you look at our riders, what I think is a lot of fun, also from my marketing background, is that our split female-male is 50-50. So that makes it a lot of fun to work on every day.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Tuli?
Thank you, Micah. Thanks for having me on the panel. I'm Tuli. I'm the CMO of Ampler Bikes, and I live in Amsterdam. I've been living in different cities and countries. And my background is I worked for Red Bull for almost 10 years. So I come from an action sports background. But now I've been with Ampler for almost 5 years. We make lightweight urban e-bikes for city commuters. And I think what differentiates us a lot is that we have a lot of different frame sizes, a lot of options, and we want our bikes to look like regular bicycles, so they're easy to maintain and service, and just to kind of give a fun commuting experience to people.
Awesome. Thank you. And Taco?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Taco. I'm the co-founder of VanMoof. We started VanMoof 14 years ago with the mission to get just as many people on bikes on the streets of New York, Paris, London, Tokyo as we have in our hometown of Amsterdam. We design and create e-bikes for the new emerging e-bike riders. So most commonly that's new riders that use the bike for commuting in big cities. So they have completely different needs as the traditional e-bike riders, different needs like theft security, safety, lots of lights. So to me, in my idea, it's a new product group that has been growing very fast in the past 5 years and will continue to grow in the next decades.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for joining me. I have a bunch of questions. I'm going to spread them around here so we can try to get as many perspectives as possible on a number of different areas. I want to start, though, with this idea of getting more sort of butts on seats we often talk about. At this point in the e-bike revolution, especially in Europe, I feel like we're almost past the point of just more butts on seats in terms of increasing adoption, especially as we start to see some countries that are reaching parity between pedal bike and e-bike sales. What would you guys say is the sort of the next big challenge in terms of increasing adoption if it's not getting people to try an e-bike anymore? Tuli, why don't we start with you?
So my perception, especially with the bikes that I work with, is that there's a lot of new e-bike brands popping up every corner right now because it's becoming a thing. People are kind of seeing the value in commuting on an e-bike. But I feel like it's also becoming a quality issue. And I think one of the biggest challenges in our industry is to make sure that we have quality over quantity and that we are able to service the bikes. We're able to take care of our customers. And if you grow too big, too fast, then very often that doesn't happen. So my perception would be that one of the biggest challenges is to maintain the customer happiness and the quality. And also through that, maybe standardizing the bikes so that people can either service them themselves or take them to a regular bike shop so that it's not that easy. It's not that difficult to get that service afterwards after you purchase the product.
Okay, interesting. And how difficult would you say it is for customers now to take an e-bike to a typical bike shop? I know, where I come from in the US, there are a lot of bike shops that say, oh, we don't want to work on that. That's an electric bike. When you talk about standardization, how much of a challenge is that?
So, fun fact, I've actually been kind of scouting around several different bike shops lately to kind of see what the interest is, because they need a training, or you can bring your own mechanic in. So I think seeing how kind of the economy and the world is changing a lot right now, I feel like a lot of bike shops actually have interest to take that service in because they also they get additional revenue from it. And I feel like the growing e-bike market is kind of also the nice addition for them to maybe changing from the standard bike shop format to also taking in more e-bikes.
Okay, absolutely. And how about you, Niels? Do you have any perspective on these new challenges to increased e-bike adoption?
I made a whole list. But a lot are like kicking in open doors, of course. And I think it varies a lot per city. So we take a lot of knowledge from Australia, but also, if you look at European cities, I think, like the usual ones, making sure that the growth of adoption goes hand in hand with improving infrastructure, making sure there's enough space for those who want to enjoy cycling. I think also what we have to keep doing, what I think we do well, is, like the energy that is in this industry. Like I think in the past year, I saw billboards from VanMoof, from Cowboy, and from other brands. And I think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like we don't have the budget. I would love to do it as well, but maybe next year. But I think it's amazing to see that there's a lot happening. And also, like that will drive people as well to bikes because we're changing the image. But the one thing I think we should be careful of, and that's if I look, for example, at Australia, I think safety is a thing. So I think we have to keep control of that we stick to speed regulation, booster buttons, bikes that are easy to jailbreak. It becomes more dangerous. And what it then would lead to, possibly, is that a government will govern on that subject. And if I look at Australia, where it's mandatory to wear a helmet, yeah, sure, it's safe, but me, being Dutch, it does take away a lot of that, what I enjoy about cycling. So I think we have a lot to continue doing. We have some things we have to stick to in order to create circumstances to see increase of adoption. And then again, I really stick to what you're saying as well, that serviceability. There's a lot of D2C brands, and we also have to make sure that it's not going to backfire to us, that buying from a D2C brand would mean that, you might not have the opportunity to service your bike. So part of the things on the list.
Awesome. So another issue that I want to talk about is when we discuss the e-bike revolution, I think it's important to remember that not all markets are at the same stage in their own e-bike revolutions. And so for companies that operate both in Europe and North American markets, I'm curious how you see those two different stages, what it means for those customers, and maybe how that means that you have to operate differently in different markets because of that. Adam, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. As an American living abroad, this is something that's quite eye-opening for me the last several years. But as the American market becomes more mature, you're going to have more people that have had e-bike experience talking to their friends about what that experience was, and what was good and what was bad. Whereas in Europe, it's much more mature and people are much more pragmatic. So outside of the commonly known legislation issues that are different between different areas, infrastructure issues, you have different preferences. Obviously, there's a huge cargo theme that's happening right here in cities like this. From my perspective, the North American market is just slightly behind in terms of knowledge, access to the product, to live it and see it firsthand, and the infrastructure to ride it safely. So if you want to attack the problem holistically, then most companies, if they have the resources, should work with their local governments to provide help for infrastructure, bike parking, bike charging, safe usage of bikes, regulations, but also they need to deliver a product that is usable and serviceable by people who might not be cyclists, who might not know how to lube a chain or adjust a derailleur, et cetera. And this is something that technology is helping us achieve the last few product cycles.
Right, absolutely. Taco, I'd like to ask you as well about that sort of perspective of how you would operate differently in different markets like the US or North America compared to Europe.
Yeah, it's a complete different use case. So the bikes are used in a different way. In European cities, people actually commute on their bikes, use it to work, use it for multiple hours a day sometimes. While in the US, the best you can hope for is that they use it in the weekend to go to the gym, to friends, or visit a golf course. I don't know, but it's more. We can see in the data that the bikes are more used in the weekend compared to European cities. And also, Americans tend to take much better care of their bike. So they bring it in for a winter check, store the bike, and then 5 months later they bring it in again for their spring check. They really care about the product and want to keep it brand new. That's just a funny insight. And in terms of infrastructure, I think in a lot of American cities, it's actually already quite good. I feel completely safe to cycle around in, let's say, San Francisco or New York. The big issue is when you get outside the cities. I tried to cycle in San Francisco from downtown to the airport. In Amsterdam, that's easily possible, but in San Francisco, I got completely stuck. So that's where the big issue is in infrastructure right now in the US. But it's a market with a tremendous potential.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before, that perhaps Americans use their bikes less, but they keep them in great shape.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now I want to talk about some achievements, because when we talk about this e-bike revolution, I feel like every year we're seeing these new achievements that we're proud of in this industry. Specifically, I'm curious, either for your companies or the industry as a whole, what are some of these largest achievements that you guys are most proud of? Tanguy, let's start with you and Cowboy.
Yeah, for me, it's quite personal because it was on my bucket list to be able to work on a project with Google. And this is what we've been doing for the last 9 months. So today we're delighted to announce a new version of our application powered by Google Maps for the navigation. We've been working on this together with them for quite some time, and it has been done specifically for bikes. So it's super exciting to have a partner like Google, like the best in the industry, focusing on bike and working with us together to deliver that new experience to our customers. And the cool thing is that it's only the first step for us. In the coming months, we'll use our own data at Cowboy, so data about crashes, theft hotspots in cities like in Berlin, in Amsterdam, in Paris, and Brussels, to build what we call the ways of e-bikes. So we're going to tell a bit more about that in the coming months, but again, I'm super excited about that new partnership because it will enable us to really improve the way our customers navigate the city and make sure that it's safer for them, but it's also shorter, faster for them to move from A to B.
Okay, and this is something that will be rolling out in the
Today.
app? Oh, today, okay.
It's today, yeah.
Okay, well, you heard it here, folks. Let's see, and then Tuli, I also wanted to ask you about this. I know we've watched Ampler grow considerably over the last few years.
I think Ampla in general is a big achievement because we come from Estonia. Estonia has a population of 1.3 million and people do not ride bikes over there. So being able to actually break through the whole country barrier, sit on the stage with all these big guys from the industry, coming from a small country, I think that's an achievement on its own. And also on the side, talking about yourself, or I don't know, Thomas from The Verge, winning bike reviews parallelly with all those bigger players, and coming from a country where you don't have funds, you don't have budget, you don't have existing consumer base, because I think we used to sell like one bike a year in Estonia because people just don't cycle. So making it actually, breaking it out from the country, becoming a kind of renowned e-bike name, that's an achievement, and I'm very proud of it. I'm Estonian, so yay.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and I think it's an important point to bring out. And in some ways, I feel like e-bikes are a great equalizer in that it's not as much about where you're from, it's about the bike that you build. And that's what people really judge you on. And I'm sure you guys have all seen that once you get bikes out to people and those reviews start coming out, I think that's what's most important is how the bike rides and what it means to people.
It's just adding on it. It's just it depends on the country you come from. If you're a brand in your own country, you already have a consumer base. So that's why I'm saying that if you don't have that, then it takes a bit more effort in the beginning to kind of break through. So yeah, that's I think it's an achievement.
Absolutely, I agree. So as someone who covers e-bikes regularly, it feels like at this point, several times a week, sometimes every day, we're seeing new models come out. There are so many new entries in the market. And for me, I'm curious what your perceptions are on how the market is headed in this way. Are we going to be moving towards an iPhone model where every year there's a new version of a bike? Or is there a sort of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it ideology here, where people get used to a familiar bike and it's not changing every year? Niels, let's start with you.
Yeah, while you're saying it, I'm just thinking, I think we're coming from traditionally going to Eurobike like a new collection every year. So I think that was the case before. But I think what we see now is that we use sort of like a base product as a fundament, and from there you see incremental steps. And I think we all do it in different ways, adding technology. We are having the philosophy to look more of a best of breed. So what are the most durable components, making specific choices in how we put our bike together. But so I think reasons, if I would speak for Lekker, is when we see development, and there is development because components improve, that's for us a reason to take another incremental step. I think we shouldn't also mix up, if we're D2C, we also need to be top of mind. So you need to chuck in a color. So now and then, love the purple. It's a good color. So yeah, it's the definition of a new product, I think, is up for debate. But I don't think it's wrong. And as long as and I think that's like, we're getting to the point. I read an article yesterday, I can't remember who it wrote, but it was basically putting the bike we had, the steel bike from 1950, compared to the bike we know today, made out of aluminium, and that our footprint and the sustainability part is just really poor. So I think if we had, like, we're moving forwards and we're focusing really on that, like fixing batteries that are broken, really making sure that e-bikes, you don't change the whole concept every year. So people just don't end up with a bike that is broken that they can't use anymore when it's 2-3 years old. I think that's where we should head towards. And if that means that we make small incremental steps, I think that's then for the better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Taco, I know that you guys just had a new unveiling of new models. I'd be curious to hear your perspective on this idea of constantly iterating versus doubling down on something that is tried and true.
I think if you look at the entire industry right now, and to me that's the industry of urban commuter e-bikes, I think that industry is still innovating at a very rapid pace. And if you compare it with the iPhone, we're probably somewhere now at the time of the iPhone 3 to 4 to 5. So lots of brands are introducing new models, but they always have some cool new features. The motor technology is improving fast. Battery technology is improving. So I still think it makes sense that a lot of brands introduce new models every year or two. In the longer time, we will definitely see a slowdown when the product category gets more mature. and then it probably changes. But right now, there's just so much happening that it makes sense that new brands and new ideas pop up all the time.
Right. And so do you see that in the next few years that we start to slow down, or is it, because in some ways I see that as technology improves, there's just more and more that we can put into e-bikes. So what kind of time frame do you see in that?
I think probably 5 to 10 years. I think in 5 to 10 years, we will see a market share of 60 to 70% of all bikes in cities will be e-bikes. It will be a huge category, and then it will probably be more mature and slow down.
Okay, interesting.
So 5 to 10 years. Then we'll get to the iPhone 10, 11, 12, where nobody knows the difference anymore between which iPhone they have.
Okay, so note to self, come back and check 5 to 10 years and see if you were right on that.
Yeah, I'll be back here on stage, and let's see what
Perfect.
what happened.
Sorry, I'll hijack the question quickly because I have a very polarizing opinion on that. I'm sorry. I feel like we have a lot of technology around us and it's very distracting. And I also feel like the trend I would like to see is that people go back more back to basics, so that also e-bikes get more standardized, they get more simple, that there's not so many screens and so many like whatever waves around us, that we actually, I don't know, connect more with the actual outside world and the nature and whatever it is. And I feel like we don't need a new iPhone every year. I think it's very wasteful. I feel like we don't. Also, iPhone doesn't need to launch a new iPhone every year. I think it's just so unnecessary. And you don't always have to be like, keep yourself in the game just by launching something new and shinier, when you can also just keep on doing some tiny corrections and improvements on the existing products. I feel like the world is very wasteful, and I think it needs to change. And I'm not dissing anyone. I feel like we're all doing a great job on getting people outside of cars and more on bikes, and that's the main purpose, what we're all doing. But I also feel like we all need to look into how we do it.
Right, absolutely. And Adam, I know that Cannondale has such a wide selection of bikes, and the e-bike line is growing as well. So I'm curious your perspective there.
Yeah, so the market is kind of divided between companies that partner with these big OEMs, Bosch, Shimano, Fazua, et cetera, and companies that are working on their own proprietary propulsion technologies. If you're working with these big suppliers, then your product cycles tend to be tied to their release timeline. And what that means is you need to focus on what you can control. So whether that's a dialogue with the OEM or whether that's crafting your own user experience and your own point of view within that segment, working on the things that are within your wheelhouse, it's ultimately not sustainable that the pace of innovation forces customers into this iPhone-like upgrade system. So what I hope for is a world where we can repair batteries, where new generations of motors fit into motor nodes of old generations of motors, and basically the things that can stay out of the landfill can stay out of the landfill. It's a challenge too for the customer, because if you're not living and breathing cycling and all these things are coming at you, it can just be confusing and overwhelming. So to tell a consistent story, the experience of cycling has not changed drastically since we were riding penny farthings. So we're really refining, and I think I would agree with Taco that in the next 5 to 10 years, those that are working on proprietary things, that will start to coalesce and slow down. And I think the customer can then get back to that basic feeling of hopping on a bike and feeling analog.
Right, absolutely. I love it. And speaking of buying or not buying a new bike every year, the process of buying bikes, I feel like, has evolved throughout the e-bike revolution, where now we're sort of seeing three competing business models. There's the direct-to-consumer, there's the traditional bike shop model, and now we're starting to see more subscriptions. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, both personally and from your companies, about maybe which model that you guys decided to go with, or if you've branched out into multiple models and why. So why don't we start with Tanguy?
Yeah, sure. So at Cowboy, we started with D2C, only online. You could buy a Cowboy bike on cowboy.com. But in 2023, we believe that there is no D2C brand anymore, and you need a mix of clicks and bricks. And so if I look at the mix today, more than 50% of our sales, they still come from the website. But we have 3 brand stores. We have a network of test riders in 60 cities in Europe. We have a network that we've just launched of a bike shop in 80 cities in Europe. That network will scale to 300 bike shops by the end of the year. But we could only do that now because we have a strong brand and those bike shops, they want to work with us. So it's quite easy for us to convince them to sell Cowboy bikes because they know it will bring more traffic to the shop. We couldn't have started with that because, I mean, you have to build a brand, you have to build a product first. And we also do that for the after sales. So today we also have a network of technicians, at-home technicians in 80 cities. But if you want, you can also take your bike and go to your bike shop in your city, and that guy will fix it for you. So I think at scale and when you have enough volume, you need that kind of mix so you can expand the market and you can grow faster. And this is what we're doing at Cowboy today.
Okay, thank you. And Tuli, I'd love to hear how Ampler has tackled this issue.
So we also kind of in a process of evaluating the market because, as you just said, like D2C format is changing. People want to get the bike right away, and there's also a lot of stock in stores still from like 2021, from like previous models and so on, not to Ampler, but like all bike brands. But going to retail or going to B2C also comes with a different price tag. So I feel like there has to be some kind of a medium and how to price your products, what kind of value you offer, and what kind of commission do the bike shops then get. So I think it's a really interesting time in the e-bike industry. I feel like all of us are kind of reevaluating our business models. So, I mean, I keep an eye on all of you as well, so I see what you're doing. And we're also adapting. So we're definitely going to have some news in the future as well. And we try to just provide bikes to our customers and give them options and give them choices.
Absolutely. And then Adam, I'd love to get your perspective as well in terms of this idea of direct-to-consumer, bike shop model, subscriptions.
Yeah, so we operate as a premium brand, and our bikes come with a premium price tag. So one of the things that we feel that's really important is that people get to touch, see, and experience the bikes in person before putting down 5,000-6,000 euros on a bike. And this is really important for us. So being a traditional, long-standing brand that operates in this segment, we continue to evolve, obviously, but we have to maintain that relationship with dealers. So one of the innovative ways that you can now get that bike and have that click and collect feeling, but still include the dealer is by using our website to track where in what established locales can you find the exact bike and the exact color that you want. So on the website, you can look at, say, Topstone Lefty 2, size medium, and then it will show you the shops in your area that have this bike in stock. And what that allows people to do is go and see and feel, find the right size, establish a smiling face relationship that they'll have for the future service of that bike, et cetera. And ultimately allows us to design bikes that I think are a little bit more on the side of self-repairability, et cetera. There's local resources, there's tools and things you can buy at that bike shop that you can bring home to make your own workshop, et cetera. And just like we've seen now, there's plenty of traffic on the Apple website, but Apple stores are still really full. So there's a market and kind of a use case for both ways of doing things.
Right, absolutely. So we're getting close to time here, but I'm going to try and squeeze one more question in. Obviously we live in a global economy, right? We're all connected. But at the same time, we've recently seen how global issues affect a global supply chain. And so I'm curious how your choice of where production is handled impacts your accessibility and the robustness of your supply chains, and whether it's important to focus on keeping production local or in building out a more robust global supply chain. Let's start with Taco.
Yeah, the way you organize your supply chain is, of course, the most important thing there is. And right now, for us, I think it's important to realize it's not that much about the assembly. The assembly of a bike can be done in a few hours, and it's the essence is where are the components made, and are you buying them off the shelf, or are you designing and engineering them in-house? And I think that's, for me, still the big question. Which model is going to win in the next 5 to 10 years? You said there's a lot of e-bike brands popping up right now, and that's because it's pretty easy to start an e-bike brand. You just get components off the shelf and assemble it, and you have your own e-bike. So lots of people are are doing that right now. But is that enough to really create a sustainable brand for the future? So for us, it's as we sell our bikes in Japan, all over the US and Europe, and it really helps to have one assembly line. We've chosen to build that up in Asia, in Taiwan. But yeah, so it depends. It has to fit to the rest of your business, and that's the most important thing there is.
Right, absolutely. And Niels, I'd love to hear your perspective as well.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Taco says. It's more, I think, like we separated our supply chains because we have such high volume in Australia. So we do that in China. And then in Europe, we also have, but then again, it's more assembly. And you're still purchasing from there where products are made. And it's more a question in the range of 2,000, 3,000 euro e-bikes. Can you actually have production taking place in Europe? Can you make that work? I think you see in a more premium price segment that production of, for example, a frame can be done in Europe. And I think there's some brands here in Amsterdam that have a different technique that could lead to that solution. So I think it will always be a juggle because it will always be a combination of components that you get from elsewhere. But I definitely think within the next 5 to 10 years, things will change. And you probably have more options when it comes to local production.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about Tanguy? Maybe finish us up with a Belgian e-bike perspective.
Yeah, sure. So at Cowboy, we've been the first e-bike brand to be B Corp certified, and part of that project was to be more sustainable on the supply chain. So we started to bring back activities quite a few years ago from Asia to Europe. But the thing is, if you want to produce and manufacture in Europe, you need some kind of scale, because the only way to compete with Asia is to have enough volume to fully automate the manufacturing process. If you have manual things to do on the line, it's not going to work because it's going to be too expensive. But now with the Cowboy 4, like we only have 2 models, so we have that kind of volume. So it's possible for us to do a few things in Europe. And the other thing that we see in the bike industry today is that you can work more and more with suppliers from the car industry because the car industry is not doing that well. So you have tier 1 suppliers from that industry trying to get in the bike industry, and so you can bring more innovation in our industry. So for us, it's super exciting because it means that we can scale faster, but we can get also more quality from our suppliers because those guys that are used to work with, Vway or Audi or whatever, and the quality that you get from those suppliers is much higher than the classic bike industry. So quite excited about that as well.
Right, absolutely. All right, well, I think that does it for us. I believe we landed this plane more or less on time. So thank you all for joining me up here, and let's have one more round of applause for our panel here.